There are people who are looking for someone. They want to find their man. They're like, I'm at the bar, I'm getting set up, and they have things in their head. I want him to be this
A
age.
checklist.
A checklist, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything wrong with a checklist?
Everything.
Oh. Okay. Tell me. There is a particular kind of silence you feel when two people sit in the exact same room but no longer live in the same world. Most of us know that feeling. It's a longing to connect, to feel seen and understood, and the uncertainty of how to bridge the distance when relationships start to drift apart. Well, for decades, Esther Perel has stepped into that space. As a world-renowned psychotherapist, a New York Times bestselling author, and podcaster, Esther has helped millions of people rethink the meaning of intimacy and trust. Today, we explore the journey of love and the strength it takes to truly see one another. I'm Hoda Kotb, and this is Making Space. First of all, Esther, I just want to say I'm so excited to be sitting with you. I've interviewed you just once on the Today Show. It was for 5 minutes, and I didn't get my fill of what I wanted
here
from
I am
you.
back
So
with the full meal.
Oh, I get the full meal. I love it. I love it. Okay, so you obviously talk to tons of people. You've done tons of sort of research through your work. What is the thing that most people are craving right now?
I mean, people always crave human connection.
Yeah.
But craving human connection at a moment where our life is more and more contactless. I just walked here on the floor, entered a room with about 50 desks, and there is not a person sitting there. Where is everybody?
Where are the people?
They are at work.
Yes.
And they are not here together. They are more and more isolated. They are in an environment that promises them frictionless living on a screen where they don't have to smell, where they can't touch, where they see you, and they think they are having eye contact, but they don't. And what people are craving more than anything is real, authentic, embodied, sensory experiences.
But they are so locked in to that sort of FaceTime. I saw you. I already know what you're up to, Esther. I saw you on Instagram. You must have had a great vacation. There's nothing that's direct. But do you think people are, I feel like they're getting filled up with all those bits and pieces?
So one of the most interesting things about the research on that used to be done, by the way, about therapy, therapy online versus therapy in person, the assistance of technology in multiple ways. And the principle is this: people are satisfied because their expectations lower. Because they expect less, they actually are pleased with what they get. But they actually don't know that this thing could taste very differently. We just had this metaphor of a full meal. If you're used to eating something that has no taste, you are satisfied that the strawberry tastes nothing like a strawberry, but you eat it. Once you've actually tasted a strawberry, real strawberry, you realize what the taste is meant to be. Then your expectations change. And then the next time you get a bland, tasteless thing, you can compare. What makes us accept certain things is the fact that our expectations lessen.
That's interesting, because this sort of brings me to this thought. Like, a lot of people are in relationships, real relationships, where they are almost like on parallel paths. They've been in relationship for a long, long time, and they call it good enough. This is good enough. This is what marriage is. This is what relationships are. I'm satisfied because this is what life is. Not everything is hearts and flowers and romance. Sometimes we just live these kind of lives, and people think that's normal.
So there are two ways I would address this. On the one hand, I would say for a lot of people, good enough is so much more than anything they've ever known. And not everybody wants to climb Mount Everest or Mount Olympus. I think that we are so reluctant these days to accept the good because we are constantly chasing the perfect. And for many people, good enough means stability, security, predictability, companionship, relying on somebody, trust, things that they never had. And I think we should stop making people constantly want to climb the mountain when they actually realize that the valley is fine for them. The plateau is fine. But for those for whom the plateau is not enough, what happens today, and this is actually the work of Eli Finkel, is that when you climb the mountain, you are clear that the view from the top is something way different than the view from the mid-level. But not everybody can get to that top. So the good relationships of today are actually much better than the relationships of the past, where people can have aspirations and can have all kinds of expectations that that's how life is attitude does not give you. But not everybody wants to do that climbing. And I think the best way for me to distinguish this is that there are relationships that survive, there are relationships that are living, and then there are relationships that are not dead. Those are, and on the other side, there are relationships that are alive, not just living, but alive.
What is that? What's the difference?
That means that aliveness is that erotic charge, but not in the sexual sense of the word, in the real mystical meaning. Aliveness means curious, radiant, vibrant, vital, playful, imaginative. That dimension of life that is not just my life works. It works, it's efficient, it's as is, I get the stuff done. That description of this is how it is. No, I actually come with an aspiration that my relationship will help me become the best version of myself, will nurture me, is an adventure, is not just a functioning system, but it has an element of adventure, of striving, of reaching for something more to it. And everybody understands the difference between not being dead and being alive.
Yeah.
Every relationship knows that. You look at a couple or at even people in a family, and these people, they are alive. They laugh. They have fun. They surprise each other. They manage that intricate dance between how much to be together and how much to be individual.
Can you get there? Because I don't think, saying you're satisfied on a plateau doesn't mean you're satisfied with a dead sort of unalive relationship. Can you go from a relationship that feels sort of lifeless to that imaginative? Because most people, I just had this retreat with 250 women, and they all came and they all kind of had a similar thing.
Which was?
Which is in their life, they don't have this spark. They all kind of felt a little dead inside.
Yes.
They
I've
felt
been
like
at
they
that
needed
retreat.
paddles.
Yeah, I've been at that retreat myself.
You've been at okay.
Yes.
So they're seeking that thing that you're describing. And when you were even saying the words, I was like, yeah, who wouldn't want that?
Yes.
All those beautiful things.
And the majority of the time, they come to ask for a permission to not be mired with the burdens of caretaking, where they worry about everybody else and everyone else should be okay. And once that happens, maybe they can pay attention to themselves. And one of the questions I love to ask women who are experiencing that is this. If I can ask you, I turn myself on when? I awaken myself. I ignite myself. I feel alive when? Which is not the same as you make me. You turn me on, you awaken me when, or what turns me on, what awakens me is. It's
so what? Okay.
I awaken myself by,
I would say, seeing a sunset in the morning while everyone's still asleep.
Yep.
I would say playing with my kids.
Yes.
Makes me,
Yep.
playing with the dog. What else makes me feel alive? Running. So what do those things have to do with?
I'll tell you. Then I'm going to ask you just for a moment the reverse. I turn myself off.
Oh.
I extinguish myself. I numb myself. I flatten myself by and when, which is not the same as you turn me off when, or what turns me off, what numbs me is.
Oh, okay. So I flatten out when I feel overworked and depleted.
Yep.
That's number one. When I'm spread too thin, when I'm trying to be everything for everybody, that depletes me and makes me feel in a funk. I get in a funk when my kids don't listen.
Yep, of course.
I get in a funk when I feel like everyone's taking.
Yes.
And I I'm not getting anything.
Right.
Okay.
So the
tell me.
first version,
Yeah.
when I watch the sunset and everybody's
Yeah.
still asleep and I don't have to think about anybody else and I can just purely admire and enjoy. When I play with my kids, it's playful. I'm not busy telling them what to do. I'm not in responsibility mode. I'm not taking care. I am actually in a playful mode. Playfulness means that I feel free. I'm not self-conscious. I'm certainly not in the realm of responsibility. When I get to be, what was the third one?
I don't remember. It was so great.
But all of them basically say, when I am not in charge of
when I'm
others,
not in charge,
when I'm not responsible, when I'm not worried, when I can turn the lens onto myself and just be and enjoy and have fun. And then the next question to all these women is, when's the last time you did this? And if you get, the last time I got to actually be, is 6 months ago, or it's, I don't know, I don't get to play with my kids. I don't know, I don't get to see my friends. I don't get to listen to the music. I don't get to go to the live show. I don't get to go to climb mountains. Then you say, that's why you're in a funk. You can work on the brakes or you can work on the accelerator. You need to loosen the brakes, and then you need to go and do those very things that give you that life energy. From that place, and those are small things. How long does it take to see a sunrise, or a sunset? I mean, it's not like we're saying, I can't take a week off and go away somewhere. No, it's just a moment. And many women are depleted because that moment becomes far and elusive.
Oh my God. By the way, that is so profound and beautiful.
It's simple.
And simple.
Because people have a list. They instantly know. When I take care of myself, when I pamper myself, when I see my friends, when I read a good novel, when I watch a show and I can actually remember the beginning when I reach the end, that kind of thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. What about people are in relationships, long-term marriages, where sex is not part of it anymore, just because of either it's the kids always need me, I'm too tired, and he seems disinterested, or he's interested and I'm not interested. How does one reignite a spark that seems like it's extinguished?
So first, I would say the question of the spark is for all couples, same-sex couples, hetero couples. It's actually, it's really interesting. This is the 20th anniversary of my book, Mating in Captivity, which was that question.
Yes.
Actually, two of the things you just said. One was, isn't it ironic that often sex makes babies and babies spell erotic disaster in couples?
Exactly.
And then more importantly, what made me write the book was that as a therapist, which now is 40 years of working with couples, I would see more and more people come into my office and say, we love each other very much, we have no sex. We all knew about people who can't stand each other, argue a lot, are depleted, and then don't want to touch each other. That's nothing to write about. But why did people come and say, I love my partner, I don't want to be anywhere else, and I can't access desire? And so that's what this whole book was about.
Big, yes.
Why does good sex fade even in couples who continue to love each other as much as ever? And why is that question important? Because it's not so long ago that our sexuality inside marriages shifted from a woman's marital duty to it being organized around desire, wanting. Desire is to own the wanting. I'm in the mood. I feel like it. I want it. And now when people are wondering, well, why don't I want it? I can do what I want and I don't feel like it.
I don't feel like it.
Make me want. It's basically what they say to their partner. Make me want. Do something that brings this back, which is why the question, I turn myself on and off versus you turn me on and off.
Yeah.
And not just sexually, in the full sense of the word. And the whole conversation for me of this book was love and desire. They relate, but they also conflict. And the very elements that nurture love, worry, caretaking, responsibility, devotion, even anxiety over the well-being of the other person. Those elements that nurture love are sometimes the very ones that stifle desire. Love wants to know the other person. Desire needs more mystery. It needs surprise. It needs an element of discovery. Love wants to narrow the distance. Desire actually needs a bit of space so that in between here lies the erotic elan. Love wants to numb all tension. Desire often needs some of it. And the very things that nurture love are sometimes the ones that stifle desire. Desire doesn't want to take responsibility. The question I ended up asking, because like the one
So fascinating.
is
Yeah.
when, and I'm going to ask it with you again.
Okay.
When do you find yourself most drawn to your partner? Not just sexually, drawn to in the broad
when-
sense.
Okay. When former partner, but when he
Partners.
Yeah. Okay. When they were in their work, like in
their
sort of work,
element.
yeah, in their element.
Okay.
Whether it was watching them play golf because they dominated, or on the tennis court, or in front of a crowd, that was like always a wow, because I was like kind of admiring.
Right.
Yeah.
And why? Look, first of all,
Yeah.
this is answer number one worldwide.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Worldwide. I've gone around and around. It's unbelievable. But now, why do you think that's what's in that?
What's in that? What is
Yes.
in that?
So, first of all, give me two more.
Two more. Okay.
Then I'll
When he's
tell you.
playing sports,
Yep.
like when he's like, lifting weights, like I just thought that was like, oh,
Yep.
wow. And when he was holding our daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, this is beautiful
'Kay.
because it's like we are literally together building the theory of mating in captivity.
Okay.
That as I would say, desire needs space, desire needs mystery.
Yeah.
Desire doesn't like to have responsibility. It's abstract. But then when I ask this question, I would literally around the world, I would get 4 groups of answers. First and foremost, when my partner is in their element, when they're competent, when they're radiant, and especially when they're self-sufficient.
Yes.
They don't need me.
Yes.
And if they don't need me, I don't have to take care of them. I don't have to be responsible. I don't have to be motherly. I can retrieve the woman from behind the mother, and I can want them.
That's big.
That was
That's
the
big.
key of this thing.
Yeah.
When they don't need me because they're in their thing, I can admire them, which involves an idealization. I can look up to them. And all of that is the grist of the mill of desire and the wanting.
Big. That's big. Okay.
Number 2 was when they surprise me.
That's good.
Okay, when they surprise me, often it's when they make me laugh, when they dress up, sometimes it's when they're vulnerable because I saw a side of them that I don't usually see. If they're always vulnerable, then it's not a turn on. But if it's a piece of them that I don't usually have access to, suddenly I'm invited in to the antechamber of this other person. The third one was when they play with the kids, which, by the way, is never in the opposite gender. It's not.
That's interesting.
Men are not turned on when they see women play with the kids. That's what mothers do, Whereas because it's so unusual, because it's again not an aspect that you're familiar with them. When they hold the child, that tenderness comes out, that broader element of masculinity, and so that one, classic. And then the next one was when we are apart.
Oh.
Because desire is often also about absence and longing.
Yeah.
When we are not together, when I haven't seen you, when we reunite, all of that tension that love doesn't necessarily feed on. And the next one was when I see my partner to the eyes of another. When they're at a party, when they're talking to other people, when the dyadic bond is momentarily opened up and someone else sees your partner with the eyes that you no longer see them.
Oh.
And once I got that, but especially the first one, when they are in their element, I understood desire feeds on different ingredients than love. They are connected, but they don't eat the same primordial elements.
By the way, this is so fascinating to me. So if I'm someone who's in a relationship that feels like meh, but you're now describing these things, how do I take what you're saying and apply it in life?
Well, the first thing is I ask you that question. Because by your answer, then I will, you say when they're in their element, I say same thing. When's the last time you sat, you tell me I'm drawn to my partner when they're at the piano. When's the last time you actually sat and listened to them when they play?
Yeah.
When's the last time you asked them to read out loud to you? When's the last time they cooked for you?
Yeah.
When's the last time you just took a day off and didn't know where you were going, and you had no idea where it's going to start nor where it's going to end? That open-endedness, that leaping into the unknown, that sense of mystery and adventure, there is where desire lives. It doesn't live in Victoria's Secret, by the way. And there is no Victor's Secret. Let's be very clear who's supposed to take care of this. You know, it really, it starts earlier, upstream. It's not like 11 o'clock at night, suddenly you're going to put something on after you've done all your chores, and it's just going to, this is crazy.
What about when you really what about when you really are tired because of little kids? You're just exhausted.
Yes,
you
then
don't have any juice. You
that's
can't.
right. Sometimes you have no juice.
Yeah.
And then I ask you, when's the last time you did anything, if possible, that gave you juice? And for that, you need a community.
Yeah.
You may not have the means to pay, and you may not always have family near you, but you need a community near you. Families do not exist in a vacuum, and couples don't exist in a vacuum. And why does all of this matter? Because this is the first time in the history of humankind that the survival of the family depends on the happiness of the couple. And most of the world, it still is not like that. You marry, it's for life. You like it, you don't like it, that's it, you stop. Too bad. But we have decided that marriage needed to reach a certain quality of relationship in the couple. And if it is not so, we will dismantle the family in order to preserve the happiness of the individuals. That is the Western model.
Yeah.
So on the long list of what your kids need, make sure that attending to your relationship features on the list.
Do you think that that's the right way? Because, I mean, couples do stay together for the kids. Do you
Yes,
think that
they
that's a bit-
prolong it. We live twice as long as 100 years ago. It's okay. We
Yeah.
can stretch it a few years. But by the end, the 50% almost of the families do dissolve,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So do something for the couple. The couple is what decides if the family will survive.
What
and
if-
by the way,
Yeah.
the majority of people, the highest rate of divorce is 3 years into children, not on the other side.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
3 years into
So
children?
people stay for the kids, but not as much.
Okay. Infidelity or betrayal, call it what you want.
Before we go to infidelity,
yeah.
how's this sounding so far?
By the way, if I had a bowl of popcorn, I would just sit here and listen to you all day. It's so good. It's so interesting. And I feel like one of my favorite things to do in life is learn. And I'm sitting here listening at the foot of the expert. So I'm fascinated by everything you're saying.
Would your 250 women have been able
Yes.
to?
Yes, they would have. By the way, because you gave something to do. And you also had another way of looking at yourself, because I was sort of like, he's cute, he turns me on. What that is, that turned me on. I didn't really think about what I was doing.
You won't be turned on if you're in the role of the mother.
Yeah.
If you won't be turned on if you are taking care of someone and being responsible for them. You will be loving, but not desiring.
Never turned on. Yeah.
And every woman knows that.
Yeah.
Can I give you
Yeah,
another version
please.
of this that is, because you asked about sexuality. Many heterosexual men in my office will say, nothing turns me on more than to see my wife turned on.
Oh.
Nice, kind,
Beautiful.
generous, beautiful. Why? Because if my partner, now I'm talking in a hetero model, if my woman is into it, then I know I'm not forcing her, and I'm not making her, and I'm not hurting her, and I'm not being predatory. It is so important for her to be into it, which is why he doesn't want just pity sex and favors. Many of them.
Wow. That is
I
interesting.
have yet to hear a straight woman in my office say, nothing turns me on more than to see him turned on.
Yeah. Right.
It's kind of irrelevant.
True.
If she's into it, it'll be great. But if she's not into it, he can be standing there in every position possible.
Yeah.
It will not do anything to her
Right.
because the shop is closed.
The shop is closed.
What turns her on then is what? Not if it's not what happens to him, it's what happens to her.
To her. Yeah.
And for that, she has to relinquish for a moment the burdens of caretaking. If the block for him is the predatory fear, the block for her is the burden of caretaking.
Wow.
That means she has to put the focus on herself for a moment in a good narcissistic investment, in the best way that the word narcissism is used, because that word has been completely destroyed. As in, I give myself the permission to make myself feel good, to allow myself to experience pleasure. Pleasure in the broad sense of the word.
Wow.
That is how deep this goes, because she is evolutionary, biologically, and socially and culturally primed to think about others.
Wow. This is so good. I want to get to betrayal in a second, but I want to ask about, there are people who are looking for someone. They want to find their man. They're like, I'm at the bar, I'm getting set up, and they have things in their head. I want him to be this
A
age.
checklist.
A checklist, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything wrong with a checklist?
Everything.
Oh. Okay. Tell me.
Well, because you're not going for a job interview. You're going for a date. A date is supposed to be an adventure, not an interview.
Okay.
I sit across the table from you. I can barely hear you. There's a bunch of noise, and I start to ask you the most boring questions. It's a terrible way to date.
So how do you, so instead of a checklist,
So what do you like to do?
Right.
What you like to do, meet someone, bring that person into the thing you were going to do. That may even involve your other friends.
Yeah.
So that you don't leave your life to go date in a sterile environment
Right.
that starts often online, that then takes a long time to manifest in person. And it's two things. One, bring the person along in. You want to go to a movie, you want to go to a museum, you want to go rollerblading, you want to go whatever you want to do, biking, physical.
Bring that person
Bring
along
that person
with
along.
you.
You will have a ton of things. A date that is based on data points is not a date.
Data points. That's so good.
It's just like, check.
No, what
you
is-
will, and
yeah.
then you check. And in the meantime, you're hoping that butterflies will somehow manifest in your belly. And then you say, I just didn't feel it. Excuse me. Is nothing to feel, Watch the person interact with the world. Watch them talk to waiters. Watch them talk to your friends. Watch them have ideas, suggestions.
Right. Live.
That's that. So that is the first thing. The second thing is, I actually really do think that if you have a life with friends, bring the date into that. Most of the time, people are shocked at first at this idea these days, because all the dating takes place far away until one day you come and you do the big reveal, and now you're waiting for the opinions of everyone. Versus, I met someone, I'm bringing someone along.
Yeah.
You will see, you will know so much, and you won't have the feeling that 3 times a week you were away from your life, dating, depleted from it, really not very happy about what happens there, and then feeling like you're not in your life. And I promise you, I don't often say do it differently like this, but I have proof.
Yes, you do. Proof's in the
It
pudding.
really
Yeah.
changes things, because so much of the dating these days is not fun.
Right.
And it's meant to be an exploration, an adventure, a discovery. And then in between, there's a few people you say, oh my God, what was that?
Yeah.
But not the whole thing.
Right.
Just to be
You're
such
missing
an
out
arduous,
on such a,
you know. What do you want to do when you're looking for a soulmate on an app?
Exactly. You think meeting online's fine, though, to start?
Yes.
Okay.
I
You have
mean,
to.
meeting anywhere.
Is fine.
But you do want to meet with a story. And these days, more and more people want certainty before they even have chemistry.
That's so big. They want certainty before they have chemistry. You're right.
You understand?
They're
It's
like, right, does he have
they-
the job I want? Is he wherever,
They
whatever?
want the story told before the title has even been written.
Oh my God, that's so good. Okay, let's talk about betrayal for a
Yeah.
second. Someone cheats in a relationship. I know friends who say it's a deal breaker. It's over. I don't care. He could have decided not to, but he made that
He,
choice.
she, they.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
always he.
I know. I think I blame that, but you're right. Okay. So is infidelity, is it fatal to a relationship?
For some couples, infidelity is the death knell. And it basically kills a relationship that often was already dying on the vine. And for others, It is an alarm system that jolts you out of your complacency and your laziness and your power inequities and your abusive behaviors, and makes you suddenly realize that you stand to lose a ton. So it goes in both directions.
Okay.
I don't think one can. And I also think your individual stories are a part of this,
Important,
but
yeah.
also the culture at large.
Yeah.
You know, what does culture say about this?
Yeah.
For most of history, infidelity was basically a man's privilege. And in many places, it still is. And it was not the end of the relationship, because it was her job to make the family stay together. So things have shifted tremendously. When marriages are not about love, infidelities are often love stories. When marriages are about love, infidelities become the worst betrayal. You know, it is a violation of trust. It puts your interest ahead of the other person. There are a ton of different kinds of infidelities, and betrayal is not just about infidelity. You may have sexual betrayals, but you may have financial betrayals. You may have family secrets. You may have addictions. Betrayal looms very large in the history of relationships and families, actually.
And it is reparable with therapy, with talking, with understanding.
A lot of things. A lot of things. I mean, in the case of in the case, look, they all need a few things in common. All betrayals. They first and foremost need acknowledgement. If you don't acknowledge, be it a political betrayal, a historical betrayal, an intergenerational betrayal, or a romantic betrayal, there needs to be acknowledgement that this even happened. Otherwise, you're like in two completely separate realities, and you say, and the other person is still in denial, or in minimizing, or in blaming you for why it happened. All of those machinations, okay. Then there needs to be remorse and guilt. A sense of conscience about how much it hurt the other person, what it did to the other person. Even though you may have reasons for why you did it, there is what it meant to you and what it did to the other. That is constantly. The third one is you have to really prove that you care about the repair.
Right.
You own the rupture, and now you care about the repair in all betrayals, and that you are taking responsibility for that. So in the case of infidelity, it is not uncommon that the hurt person will have questions and questions all the time. And you will say, I've already answered that. I've already answered that. What is for you the past is often for the other person the imminent present.
Yeah.
And they are just getting used to what just happened. And the rug has been pulled from under them, and their brain is fractured, and they need to put the pieces back together. And they're going to ask you the same question over and over again, not because they're annoying, but because they're trying to make some sense out of this total chaos. That you need to, and be kind and generous about that. And if you can even ask them, is there something you need to know, versus hoping that they won't ask anything.
Burying it. Maybe
For
they won't ask.
every time you're the one initiating the conversation, they are more likely to say, no, it's okay, than you trying to hope, oh, can I have a day without this?
Yes.
You
Why
know?
are we talking?
Another 3 hours.
All right. Very important. Okay. I am so sad that we have to wrap up this conversation, but I do want to ask
This
you
has
about.
gone by so
it's
fast.
so awesome. It's so awesome. You believe in love, obviously, right?
I do.
What about people who wonder, is it too late for love? Did I miss, the window, or I'm at this stage in my life where I have a lot of blessings?
All right. It's interesting because Mating in Captivity, which is 20 now, is written for romantic couples or for people who seek romantic love. I then thought, I do believe in love, but I need to make clear that the concept I'm talking about is much broader. I think friendships are extremely important in people's lives. Mentorship, partnerships, creative engagements with others. There's a ton of other relationships that we need in order to exist and in order for our romantic relationships to thrive. One of the biggest challenges of romantic love is that we have basically enlisted one person to give us what an entire community used to provide. And that has to change. especially today, we crumble under the expectations of everything we want from one person. So I think love is available to us all, and not everyone wants it in the romantic version. For many people, their friendships is what nurtures them and accompanies them through multiple marriages, for that matter, or committed relationships. I think that you never know. And that is the beauty of today, is that it used to be if you didn't catch it at the first wave, you just never did. It's not true. You know, I have a dear friend who never married, never had a child, met a boyfriend in her late 50s, and now is a grandmother through his children. So she may not have been a mother, but she's a wonderful grandmother. There is a flexibility today in the way we can catch the train, so to speak, you know, go on the love train, that I think is really unique for our times. We are redefining family, we are redefining what is a couple, and we are redefining what is the circle of care.
And let me just wrap up with one question that we ask everybody here. So if you, this podcast is called Making Space. So if you had a full day, Esther, that was just for you, not one thing on the calendar, you woke up when you wanted, you went to sleep when you wanted, and your day was filled with only what you wanted. How would you spend that day? When would you wake up? What would you do?
I have many days like this, but the essence of a day like that is no planning and no place to get to on time. So it's the abolition of structure. That's the first thing. I would start my day with a good hour and a half of yoga. I may or may not continue with some other gym stuff if I'm in all with a friend. None of them alone. That is probably the big thing. Then I may just go and take a walk and stroll, go to the market, and just let myself be seduced by the smells and the tastes and the touches of the different things I see. It's very sensory. It's not much in my head. And then it's about hopping. Where does the wind blow that I can just be taken? Oh, I go to this, whatever. Sometimes on the weekends it's galleries, or if it's if I'm out of town, it's hiking. Swimming in the lake is a big one as the summer approaches. A good day is a day where I'm physically exhausted
That's
at the end.
good. Oh,
Not
that's good.
mentally exhausted, which is often the case, but physically, where I feel like I've really pushed. It's that.
Esther, that was a beautiful, enlightening conversation. Thank you. Thank you so
very
much.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC, or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.